So my journey in old Detroit as the ultimate officer of the law began during a late night news broadcast at Channel 9, where old mate Casey Wong was informing the good people of old Detroit that crime was on the rise, as though everyone in old Detroit hadn't already been shanked at least half a dozen times. But then suddenly, in the middle of the broadcast, a crime took place in the studio itself, where the leader of a local gang called the Torchheads rocked up to take everyone hostage and refused to release them unless 3,000 metric tons of crack cocaine was pumped straight through the aircon. To show everyone that he wasn't messing around, he injected a syringe full of ligma into some police officer's neck, causing him to instantly turn into a massive dong. But the good people of old Detroit had nothing to fear because the biggest dong of them all was on the scene, rocking up in a sloppy jalopy ready for action. Me. RoboCop. Officer Dingleberries briefed me on the situation, which was that there were a couple of sketchy looking up the road looking for some crack. I reminded him that I was a police officer and crack was illegal, even in this shithole.
Hey handsome, we're here for the show!
As it turns out, Officer Dingleberries wasn't kidding. There were indeed a couple of looking for some crack, but I had more important things to deal with. You see, everywhere I looked, officers were taking statements from bystanders that had seen the siege on the TV station take place. Clearly, everyone was shaken up, but nowhere near as shaken up as they were going to be once I ripped out my massive robo. Dead bodies littered the street. Clearly, this was not just a siege, but a Rainbow Six siege. The highly trained paramedics on the scene continued to resuscitate dead people ad infinitum, even after death, which is always a reliable indicator of how experienced and professional they are. This was what the people of old Detroit deserved. Nothing but the best. And all the while, Channel 9 studios towered above us like a permanent reminder that big buildings are big. My partner Officer Lewis rocked up and told me that it was time to penetrate deeply, and so we did.
Hey, you can't go in yet. We need to wait for the reinforcements.
Reinforcements have arrived.
As soon as we got inside, we were confronted with the horrific reality that was now Channel 9. Torch heads everywhere doing dumb shit. I had a feeling that things were going to get pretty messy. And well, what can I say? Things got messy, very messy. And then I proceeded to engage in more gratuitous violence, taking extra care to do as much structural damage to the building as I possibly could. Yeeting baddies out the window was also something that I quite enjoyed doing whenever possible. And so I found a baddie and yeeted him out the window. As we approached the director's office, we could hear screams coming from the other side of the door and knew that we had to act fast if we were to neutralize the hostage situation that was brewing. My good partner secured the hosties, one of whom had ligma, and then I proceeded to make my way to the main studio where the live broadcast was originating from. Then, while I was taking a nice stroll on the walkway thingy, a booby trap went off, blew me up, and launched me across the room directly onto my big robo head. What preceded was best described as a series of bizarre hallucinations where voices of my ex-family echoed in my head, telling me that I was a mad lad and that they were perfectly okay with me getting domed because it meant the creation of legendary upholder of the law, RoboCrap. So I just took a few moments to chill out, smash some bananas, Diet Coke, and watch a bit of telly. Then smashed the crap out of another door, blasted everyone in the face with my AK-47, and decided that that day was a good day. But for me, not for them, because they dead. But hold on just a second, not all of them were dead. That is to say that some of them were alive, and they had a hostie that they were threatening to blast with a bazooka. Unfortunately, however, I was glitching out pretty badly due to the copious amounts of crack cocainus that was pumping through the aircon. Fortunately, however, my partner rocked up, who was immune to crack cocainus, and shot the criminal in the face, saving the hostie and making me look like an incompetent toaster. Sadly, it was all captured on camera too. Back at the precinct, as a precaution, the dude in charge of my junk ordered the science guy to put a computer chip in my head that would monitor my escapades and provide feedback if I were to ever freak out on another mission and piss myself during a hostage situation. Again, they also organized a therapist for me to consult with once a day. She had a robotic right hand that she said she got because her previous job involved a lot of handwork. But then Then suddenly, just as I started discussing my abandonment issues with her, Officer Asscrack sprinted into the room telling me to head to the briefing room immediately because stuff was going down. Sergeant Reed told me that a new gangster had arrived in Old Detroit and was collaborating with other gangs in order to create more chaos and deal more crack. I knew that I immediately needed to do something about this. But first, there was a situation down at the local supermarket that needed my attention. You see, these young thugs were blasting their boombox so loud that it was interfering with old Ronnie's business. So I very gently encouraged them to turn down the volume ever so slightly. Problem solved. As I continued patrolling the streets of Old Detroit looking for slime balls to execute justice on, I stumbled across a crime scene, at which there had just been a murder. Now, there was a deceased on the floor, but the culprit could not be found. I knew it was time to investigate. The crazy hobo at the scene of the crime with the nice Ray-Ban sunglasses told us that a big green alien did it, and that if we could find a big green alien, we would immediately solve this murder. This sounded like very solid and reliable information from a very solid and reliable guy. So I just took a brief stroll up the road to the local film set where I thought I might just be able to find myself a big green alien. What I found instead, however, was a bastard movie star with a terrible attitude problem. Interestingly, however, he was promoting a sunblock cream that just so happened to be green in color. The plot thickened, and so did my The director lady told me to check the security cameras because apparently some sus dude had been there earlier that day to organize a visit for the movie star guy. So I walked over to the camera thingo and had a look, and just as suspected, very sus activity had occurred there earlier that day. My investigation then led me to the local gas station where big green handprints defaced the door. I knew I was onto something, so I busted my way in and got ready to search the place. But first, I wanted to see how much red denim pads was selling for that day, as I am an avid bargain hunter. As soon as I got in the back room though, I noticed a funny green looking dude standing there in his underpants screaming about how the sunblock was burning his skin. He pled his case to me and swore that he didn't do it, but that the movie star did it, and he was only his understudy because the movie star refused to put on the green sunblock due to its toxicity. In the back room behind him, however, I found a rather incriminating scene. A bang bed covered in blood with a hammer on the floor and a pair of sunglasses just like the dude's glasses. Pretty sus, bro. But there was a secret pervert cam set up in the crapper next door on the other side of the wall that captured the entire incident taking place. As it turned out, the tried to blackmail the actor, and the actor buffed her in the head with a hammer. Case closed. I told the understudy guy that he was still going to prison for tampering with a corpse, and that medical assistance would be provided for him as his skin was clearly burning its way off his skeleton in record time. Then the ambo arrived and took his dead body to hospital because he was dead, and hospital is where dead people go. Back at the film set, it seemed like movie star guy had finally given up on his understudy returning and decided to do the shoot himself. The shoot never finished though because justice had arrived and he was going to spend the next 500 years in the slammer.
It hurts!
Having made the world a better place, I thought it might be time to head to the local arcade and dump all my quarters into the 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game. But when I got inside, I caught wind of an illegal conspiracy going on where the owner was selling weeds. But he disappeared into the back door where I could not get him because there was a door, and he closed it. So I buffed the door off its hinges and legally killed the guy on the other side of it. Legally. I eagerly went downstairs to check on him, however, but he was indeed dead. Good. The arcade owner guy refused to open the door to his office and let me in, as though I couldn't just crack it in half like I did with every other door I encountered on a daily basis. So I cracked it in half, then gunned down everyone in the room, including the owner of the arcade. Drug problem solved, baby. The ambo then rocked up again and picked up the dead guy to take him to hospital because hospital is where dead people go. And I then leisurely made my way over to the hideout where the torch heads were hanging and where they had Detroit PD's #1 informant being held hostage. Fortunately, he only had jumper leads on his testicles, which means that they hadn't started torturing him yet. We then together decided to play cops and found some footprints on the floor that seemed to go behind the poorly parked van in the dark alleyway we were hanging in. Then suddenly, we heard it. Gunshots. But much to our relief, it was just some kids doing what kids do. Playing with guns. Later that night, my partner told me that she kept my police badge from when I was actually alive and to keep it and remember that my dead brain was still in my robotic skull. I said, yeah, cool. Then I shit myself. And together we busted our way into the other Torchhead hideout where their leader, Soot, was hanging out doing a punk rock concert about his micro-pig. But then he told his audience to kill us and some sexy time ensued. I cracked out my standard issue AK-47 once more and proceeded to happily turn all those slime balls into watering cans. And then smashed my way into Soot's hiding place, grabbing him and smashing him into the ceiling because I thought it was funny. But then, just as I was about to dome him, the new guy, that is the new gangster in town that I was informed about at the briefing, radioed me to tell me that he had my partner hostage and to bring Soot for a partner swap. But I told him I was not a swinger. But then after we swapped partners, he shot his partner in the pink and killed him. I tried to get my gun and apprehend the bad dude, but then I started getting all f***y again, losing complete control over my robo body, as though I were nothing more than a broken microwave. Then he busted a cap in my partner's ass too. This is why partner swapping is bad, I said to myself. But after I had time to reinstall Windows on my dick, I walked back to the police precinct and picked up my hot ride, then drove it to the hideout of the new gang that had partnered up with the bad dude. They were called the Vultures, and they rode tricycles. Everywhere I looked, hooligans on tricycles were thanging it around the place, but fortunately, they were really, really stupid. Now, obviously, I'm a complete idiot, and this entire video will be full of plot holes, but do your best to hang with me, if you can. So this cop car belonged to a cop that went missing and that I was actually trying to find, and so I found a VHS player and a tape that had video evidence of the fact that the cop I was looking for had been there at some point in time, though the situation he was in looked rather dire, to say the least. But when I finally found him, he was an ice cream. Somebody had to pay, and seeing as the gang leader Spike was the one responsible, I thought he should fit the bill. He was hiding in a toilet like a bitch. But just as I was about to shoot him in the balls, a very rude robot busted in and started pumping the cop in the ass. So I used my combat skills to kill that bad robot until it was dead, which unfortunately was also enough time for Spike to escape. Nevertheless, with some free time on my hands, I drove down to the hospital to check on my partner, who was dead. But she wasn't dead. She was alive, but almost dead. But just then I heard the doctor outside talking about dead bodies going missing from the morgue, and I knew I was onto something. Could all this be connected? I don't know, probably. The doctor of death told me that all the bodies that had been stolen had fully intact brains. Interesting, I thought to myself as I dripped hot grease all over the floor from my robo ass. Back at Popo HQ, they patched up my malfunctioning robo ass and told me to get back on the streets and clean them up. So I got in my car and fanged it out of the car park as hard and fast as I could, ensuring that I completely bottomed out the engine on the ramp on the way up. As soon as I got out, I realized that the local bank was being heisted, but fortunately Payday 2 and Payday 3 had prepared me for this occasion, and when I got there, I made sure to spread this very important news, and that is that guns don't kill people. People kill guns. I then eventually busted my way into the vault and gunned down down the gangsters that wished to do me harm. And the bank manager who was being held hostage there told me that I was a mad kid and thanked me for the bomb stuck to his chest, then requested that I did not remove it. He then offered me $5 to buy some engine oil on the way home, as I looked like I was about to shit myself again. Joke was on him though, because I wasn't going home. I went to meet with the old man who was the bazillionaire organizing to demolish old Detroit so that he could build new Detroit over the top of it. He told me that he admired me for my humanity despite being dead and a robot. Then I said thanks, you old but had a feeling that he would pop up again later in the story, somehow also dead and also a robot. Ominous foreshadowing, shadowing. Then I walked around the streets issuing tickets to idiots that did not know how to properly park their cars, then headed to the basketball courts to do the robo dance for a couple of fans. Later that day, I bumped into my junkie mate outside the cinema, who asked me to go with him to the video shop and help him find a video that he could not remember the name of. But then, while we were quietly browsing the VHS tapes in the video shop, a bunch of crackheads busted in looking for a relationship. I told them no relationship, but I have plenty of bullets, and proceeded to destroy the entire video shop in the process. My exploits had now made quite a name for myself around town, and seeing as the next mayoral election was just around the corner, John Mills, one of the candidates, pulled me into his limo for a and asked me to vote for him. Later that day, when my limo ride was over, I headed to another part of town where the Torchheads had captured Spike, the leader of the Vultures, and they were threatening to kill him if they didn't get some Pizza Hut delivered in the next 5 minutes. Unfortunately for them, however, they got some Robo Hut instead. I then tried to interrogate Spike and get him to tell me what he was planning, which apparently was to blow something up. But then he died suddenly and got picked up by the Ambo to be taken to the hospital, because hospital is where all the dead people go. Speaking of hospitals, I decided that maybe I should go there myself to check if my partner was dead yet. But she was not dead. She was alive. That is to say that she was not dead and that she was alive and definitely not dead. My adventures then took me to the local abandoned shopping mall, where a reporter was spying on the big bad guy who was meeting with some other bad guys to discuss some bad guy stuff. But then next minute, seemingly out of nowhere, I got hit by a car full of junkies, and then I started malfunctioning again. Engine oil spewing out of my backside uncontrollably. I clambered my way to the rooftop of the shopping mall, where the entire FBI was waiting for me. Even the chief of police was there, who said hello, then shot me in the face. When I eventually came to, I woke up in the middle of what appeared to be some kind of delusional hallucination inside my old home before I got double tapped on that fateful night. Then suddenly my old self appeared before me, telling me that I was a piece of trash and to immediately install Linux. Then he shot me in the face. And then when I finally came to yet again, this time probably in reality, I woke up with the bad dude on the roof. And so I apprehended him and I sent him to the slammer for being a turd.
You would have already...
You have the right to an attorney.
I wanted to make sure though that he was doing terribly, so I headed to the slammer myself to check up on him. Much to my disappointment, however, he was actually doing okay, and he had a very cheeky look in his eye. I had a feeling that something was about to go down soon, and I liked it. Then, unsurprisingly, as soon as we finished talking, the sirens went off and everyone went hysterical. All the prisoners had broken out of their cells and a tremendously large riot was in full swing. It was fantastic. So I headed straight for the prison warden's office and bust my way through the door, then busted some hot rounds in everyone's ass. The warden was very grateful for saving him and offered me a golden then gunned my way through the car park, desperately trying to get to the bad guy, who was now, according to the aerial choppers witnessing the scene, making his way to his Lambo for a quick getaway. Sadly, however, when I finally caught up to him and tried to apprehend him yet again, I started malfunctioning, allowing him the time he needed to escape in the process. What was wrong with me, I thought? If only I were an Apple Mac. And just like that, off he flew, out of my life, the one that got away. I would remember him forever. But it was okay, because my girlfriend, the old robot hand doctor, called me to come and save her from the motel where she was staying, because she had a feeling that bad guys were trying to assassinate her. She let me in and then started to explain to me the strange happenings that had been going on and why she felt that her life was in danger. danger. I assured her that everything was okay until the door knocked. Apparently it was room service. Only nobody ordered room service, and we weren't at a hotel. Weird, I thought. Then I opened the door and shot everyone in the face, and also made sure that I shot a couple of guys in the dick as well, as I very carefully escorted the VIP to safety. And all thanks to me, Robo Hand Lady lived to die another day. I knew that now things were getting serious and that I needed to end the madness that had taken old Detroit to levels of crappiness that nobody ever thought possible. And what better place to deal with that crappiness than in the sewer, which was full of crap. My investigations uncovered a secret plot that was brewing, where the bad guys were planning to blow up the bridge connecting old Detroit to where new Detroit was going to be built. Before doing that, however, there was a murder that needed solving. You see, the campaign dude for the mayoral candidate John Mills had been strangled in his car. I decided that the best place to start my investigation was at his office. However, when I got there, I noticed a sus lady trying to bust into the door. She told me that she was the guy's assistant and that she didn't have a key to get into the office because her boss didn't turn up for work that day, seemingly oblivious to the fact that he was murdered. It was fine though, because I had my master key with me, and after opening the door gently, I started to search the place, trying to piece together the events that led to that man's death. Eventually, I found an appointment in the guy's book that said he was meeting somebody called G. G, I thought to myself, G banger? But no, his assistant said G was Gloria, a that he liked to hang out with, and to go and find G because maybe G was the G that killed that guy's PP. So I went and knocked on G's door, and she asked me to come in. She then told me that she was a dominatrix and that I had been a bad robot. I left G's place rather sore but entirely convinced that she did not do it. When I got back to the campaign guy's office, however, to arrest his assistant that was now wanted under the suspicion of murder, the cops on the scene said that she had miraculously disappeared. But using my big brain power, I located a secret button on the side of the desk that was connected to a secret panic room in the wall behind the bookshelf. Inside of that room, old Agatha the psychopath was hard at work trying to destroy evidence, and then had the audacity to try to shoot me with a gun that had no bullets in it. Bad move, Aggie, you dumb lady. Needless to say, Aggie was bundled into the cop car and sent straight to jail without $200. With the knowledge I now possessed about the plot to blow up the bridge, I headed to OCPHQ to tell somebody who cared, but unfortunately, nobody cared. Then when I finally got to the CEO's boardroom, all I found was a PC on a desk with a strange video presentation. Basically, what they were trying to do was sell the promise of removing your brain and stuffing it into a robot after you died, so you could essentially live forever. And I unknowingly was their poster boy for their campaign.
Is this what you wanted to see?
I couldn't imagine why anybody would want my existence because I was miserable as hell. I kept crapping myself, I was nothing but a piece of face glued to a robot with a dead brain in my head, and I had no being me was not all it was cracked up to be. So I busted my way into the CEO's office to file a complaint, only to discover that the old man from earlier in the story had actually kicked the bucket, and now this dickhead had taken over. Our conversation went a little something like this.
I'm firing the entire police force and replacing them all with my robots.
Those robots are unreliable.
Oh, that's adorable. Especially coming from you. Now, you leave. Bitches, come!
Anyway, now that I and all the other police officers in old Detroit had been fired, I headed to the Arms Expo to assist that guy with some weird demonstration he had planned. But just as he unveiled his all-new UED robots that were meant to take over the Popo, they all went rogue and started shooting up the place, as though nobody saw this coming. So I cracked out my pistol and gunned them all down with some good old boom boom bang bang banga banga boom boom, only to discover that my arch nemesis had once again returned for even more sexy time. This time, however, he had taken control of the entire robot army. Oh, what a pain in my ass. So naturally, I located the closest light machine gun and proceeded to shoot everybody to pieces. Then blacked out again and woke up dangling on the end of a hook. The bad dude revealed to me that all along it was the lighter that was making me lose my shit. Wow, what a plot twist. I couldn't believe it. Wow. Wow. And then after he escaped yet again, I woke up back at Police HQ completely unaware of everything that had transpired. Though I had a tremendously massive robo-bomb. Frustrated, I headed outside to let off a little steam, as you do occasionally. Then headed to the sewers to defuse the bomb thingy that was meant to destroy the bridge, completely thwarting the gangsters' plans and ruining their day. And then finally, so I could finish this game, I knew immediately I had to go to this place. I knew it was the right place when I saw someone's mum stripping on a stage for a bunch of drunk tradies. After all, this was New Detroit, or at least where New Detroit was supposed to be built, and where I would yet again meet with the supervillain of this story for the very last time. Now, as I said earlier, he had an army of robots and an army of mercenaries, but as soon as I told them that the bad dude had no money to pay them for their work because the old guy had died, they were like, "Laters!"
No hard feelings, RoboCop, just business.
I have bigger fish to fry.
And as for the robots, well, I shot off the dude's hand, and it's pretty hard to press a remote button with no hand. He immediately ran over to the nearest robot to grab its Uzi as though that was going to stop me. And well, he is 100% not alive anymore. Let's just say that. Matter of fact, Things weren't quite over yet though. You see, reports had been coming in of a monster killing everyone in the OCP building and smashing the place up real good. And seeing as that sounded like my kind of party, I went to investigate. As soon as I got there though, I realized what was going on. That dumb robot from the Arms Expo had gone rogue and killed everyone in the building. And it was actually the old man who died earlier in robo form. I told you this was going to happen. Remember that foreshadowing? Shadowing. Anyway, I tried to tell him to turn himself in to a floppy disk. But he said no, and so we had a boss battle. But then, when the boss battle was getting really juicy, a giant piece of concrete fell from the sky and squished him. Being a hero though, I tried to rescue him from under it. But then more concrete fell on him. And then he saved me. And then that was the end of the whole game. Later that night on the news, they revealed that New Detroit was no longer happening anymore. That legendary Yakuza Kazuma Kiryu had bought out the OCP and was planning to turn it into a karaoke bar. That the new mayor, John Mills, resigned after only one day in office. That my junkie mate had turned over a new leaf, or at least put on a new shirt. And that this annoying guy actually ended up getting killed by the robot. And that nobody went to his funeral, except Mullet Bob. They also mentioned on the news that a koala had made its way all the way from Australia to Detroit. Pretty impressive if you ask me. And all in all, I have to say, from me personally, that RoboCop Rogue City was a game that I didn't even know was in development, but that turned out to honestly be the best game that I've played this year. I absolutely loved it. It's a banger. Well done, devs. Laters.